Excuse me. So my name is James Armour and I'm unemployed. The Selkie is a 307-kilometre adventure race across the Scottish Outer Hebrides. It starts at the Barrowhead Lighthouse at the southern end of the Outer Hebrides and crosses over all of the archipelago of islands up to the Butt of Lewis Lighthouse at the northern end. The Selkie stands for the mythological Norse Gaelic seal creatures that used to come onto land and shed off their seal skin and walk around as humans. And I took inspiration from this because it's the culture of the Outer Hebrides, it's the Norse Gaelic roots, and it's quite like what I'm going to be doing for my race. I'm going to be coming onto land, getting back in the water, coming onto land. There's 6 different swims and 6 different running sections. I'm going to be on the bike twice. So really I felt that I was recreating what the Selkie used to do. This sound was the most notorious amongst all of the islands for its ever-changing and unpredictable currents. A swell builds over 3,000 kilometres of open ocean. It's funneled through this 10-kilometre stretch of reefs and skerries. My bones were brittle with the cold, and I was struggling to keep myself warm, let alone move through this tidal maze. The decision to land and run over one of the small islands blocking my way was forced upon me. Fortunately, it allowed me to warm my centre and push on for the last few kilometres of the swim. And after 3.5 hours of battling against these strong currents, I finally landed on the last island. We're not over! It's not over! Yeah. That was the final swim. That was pretty damn tough. But I'm now here. No comment. Here's a coat.
Oh, you're so amazing!
How are you doing?
Great! I can't believe you've made
this?
it!
I know, neither do I.
Phenomenal!
I didn't think I was going to.
Yeah.
Coffee, sir? Nice to see you.
Brilliant!
Everyone had a nice morning? Woohoo! Shivering away, man. Get warmed up. Back on the bike, pedalling through the mountains of Harris, every fresh ascent burned through my legs. I've never wished for the ability to glide and soar more than now, an ability that some residents of these isles have mastered.
So I'm Robin Reid and I'm the RSPB Conservation Officer for the Western Isles, and I also do a lot of work in a voluntary capacity on birds of prey. So we've actually, on the Outer Hebrides, we've pretty much got the highest densities of golden eagles anywhere in Europe, well, possibly anywhere in the world. It's one of the highest densities recorded, and that's basically the Outer Hebrides and the Isle of Mull, and some of the islands like Jura have got these really high densities, and pretty much every glen has got a pair of golden eagles in it. We've got all this open landscape that's relatively undisturbed, and a lot of these birds, they're looking for, secluded nest sites where they're free from disturbance, and with large areas of habitat. The golden eagles, they have a big territory, they need a big area to hunt over. But out here, foxes are absent, quite a lot of other mammalian predators are absent, which means that avian predators have everything to themselves. So that's one of the other reasons they reach a high density here. Also, we don't have certainly not a recent history of persecution or not intensive persecution, which there still is a problem with on on the mainland in some areas, particularly in areas managed intensively for grouse. White-tailed eagles, to be honest, it's like a completely different bird. They're much more closely related to vultures, and they're more sociable in some ways. You regularly see sea eagles together, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 together, but quite different behaviour to the golden eagle. Even though they look really quite similar, it can be difficult to tell apart. There has been a bit of controversy about the sea eagle reintroduction into Scotland. But you know, they're well established now. They've been here since the mid-70s. That was when the reintroduction started on the Isle of Rum. And hopefully people are starting to accept them as a native species, which is what they are. You know, they were only absent because we drove them to extinction, and now we've brought them back, and hopefully people can accept them as being, you know, part of the ecosystem. Uist in particular is a real hotspot for short-eared owls. That's partly because there's a big vole population there, so, but also probably the abundance of passerines as well on the machas, just huge populations of breeding birds on the machas and wintering birds. But also, you know, the uist, very little of it has been managed intensively for intensive agriculture. So the crofting system is what we call a high nature value farming system, basically. You know, the places where species like short-eared owls and kestrels have declined, it's where you've got agricultural intensification, and you know, there's a lot of pesticides being used, the field margins have disappeared, and so their prey species populations have declined as well. Hen harriers, just one of the most amazing species to watch, you know, just stunning species. And just makes the day out on the moor. And they are doing well here, but they're in decline across the UK generally, and that is because of this persistent persecution on grouse moors, which, you know, it's incredible really that in this day and age that's still going on. But out here they are doing really well. That's partly because we don't have driven grouse, so you don't have that conflict of interest between the harriers and humans. But also just the extent of habitat and the abundance of birds and the abundance of voles on Uist is really interesting. In fact, on Lewis, we don't have voles are absent, but hen harriers have just started breeding here in the last 10 years, which is fascinating, and we still don't quite know why, because in most places the theory is that voles are important for getting the hen harriers into breeding condition, but they've just established this new population on Lewis, which is just fantastic to see, you know, when they're in decline, and is really important when they're in decline in the rest of the UK. Nature, to me, it like provides such an intrinsic and important thing. Nature doesn't really have a voice of its own. We've got to give it its voice. You know, when there's so much destruction going on, that's only benefiting humans, if even that. Our baseline has been eroded. What you grow up with, that is the baseline you should be striving for. But the problem is then, if biodiversity is declining, then with each generation, there's that shifting baseline, and our baseline of what we think we should be striving for is always getting eroded away to something less. And I guess what's important is to consider what the potential is and how much better the environment could be.
As I started the 60-kilometre home straight, I was shattered. Legs cramping, feet aching, my mind wandering to places a mind never should. However, the closer I got to the finish, the more of my friends joined until there was a huge support group around me. In truth, when you take on and prepare for a challenge like this, it's a burden on your life, but it's also a burden on the life of your friends. Without their support, I wouldn't have made it past the first islands. I'm no Forrest Gump, but garnering my own wee herd of fellow runners for the final stretch really kicked my legs into top gear to finish this journey right and close this chapter in my life. Buddy. I would die. Thank you, everybody. Couldn't have done it without each and every one of you. After spending years of working in the city, I felt disconnected from the outdoors and completely unaware of the wildlife around me. The Selkie was my opportunity to rediscover that connection. I'm optimistic about the future for these final strongholds of nature, despite the destruction being inflicted elsewhere. These habitats are finely tuned. For nature to flourish, we must safeguard the flora and fauna that thrive within it. By failing to protect any single element, we upset this delicate balance. These isles and seas of the Outer Hebrides still have that balance, and I hope we can all strive to keep it that way.